He thought buying a ghost town meant quiet nights and empty rooms echoing with dust. But when 7 towering widows surrounded him and said, "You're sleeping with all of us tonight," it left only one question: had he inherited solitude, or bound himself to a destiny written in their desperate hunger for survival? By the time Ronan Vale crested the last ridge, the sun was a raw coin sinking behind a wall of red buttes, and Ash Hollow lay below him like a promise no one had kept. Wind pushed lines of dust along the empty street, and the clapboard front's hotel, assay, office, a church, with its bell long gone, leaned together as if they'd been whispering for years. He'd bought the whole place sight unseen, a sheriff's deed and a gambler's instinct telling him solitude could be worth more than gold. Out here, he could outpace the past. Out here, no one would call his name at night. He tied his mare to a split post outside the saloon, palmed the deed from his breast pocket, and touched the raised seal like a talisman. "Owner," he said under his breath, as if saying it might make the word weigh more. The bat wings creaked when he pushed through. Inside, the room smelled of old rye and old secrets. A single glass stood upside down on the counter, clouded with grit. He flipped it right side up, listening. The silence wasn't empty, it felt arranged. "Quick one for you watching. Would you spend a single night alone in a ghost town if it were yours? Yes or no? Drop your answer in the comments." Ronan struck a match and lit a lamp. The flame wobbled, threw long shadows across a piano with a missing key tooth, and a scatter of boot prints where no one should have walked in years. His heartbeat tapped steady in his ears. He knelt, pressed a knuckle to the marks. Fresh? Someone had dragged something heavy. No, many someones. Circling, crossing, a pattern that didn't quite make sense. He checked the back door. The hinge moaned like a warning. Behind the saloon, the alley ran toward a stable. In the dirt, another sign: a braid of hair ribbon caught beneath a stone. He lifted it. Silk, not weathered. He turned, every inch of him listening now, and the town listened back. "Who's there?" he called. No echo came, just the hush of sifting sand. He moved along the street, lamp in one hand, the other near the iron at his hip. The hotel porch sighed under his step. He peered through the lobby window. Chairs straightened. Ledger open. A smell lavender and smoke rolled out, and wrapped him in the memory of a parlor after Sunday service. Except this perfume had no right surviving a decade of wind. The church door was latched from the inside. Ronan felt the land gather itself around him, old boards and broken fences aligning like chessmen. He knew traps. He'd ridden with men who set them. But this was different. The town itself felt watchful, expectant, as though someone had told it to wait. He turned back toward the throat of Main Street, where the saloon lamp flickered in the dark like an eye opening and closing. That was when he saw the first figure, tall, still, standing in the dust a dozen paces away. Then another, to his left, the lamplight catching the edge of a black veil. Then 5 more, stepping from between buildings, from the mouth of the alley, from the hotel porch, like shadows acquiring shape. They were women towering, grave, dressed in mourning that had outlasted fashion. Veils drifted like storm clouds, and the pale ovals of their faces were carved by years that did not soften. Rings gleamed on hands that had buried husbands and held on to their names. Their silence pressed against Ronan's chest until the tallest lifted her chin. Her voice was a bell struck in ice. "You bought our town, Mr. Vale," she said, "and now you'll keep what it owes." The 7 closed a step, skirts whispering. "You're sleeping with all of us tonight." Ronan Vale had faced shootouts, storms, and nights when the desert itself seemed to rise against him. Yet nothing compared to the pressure of those 7 veiled women closing in, their shadows fanning across the dust like black wings. Their leader, the tallest, with eyes glimmering pale as moonlight, stepped forward. "You think a deed makes you master here?" she said, her voice low and thrumming with grief. "Ash Hollow is not yours to own. It is ours, and tonight you will belong to all of us." Ronan's hand hovered near his revolver, though some instinct told him cold iron wouldn't help against this gathering. Their faces, half hidden behind mourning veils, bore no softness. Rings clinked as they flexed pale fingers, and each of them carried the weight of years lost. "I bought this town fair and legal," Ronan answered, forcing his voice steady. "You want to contest that? There are courts in San Miguel, not in the dust of an abandoned street." At that, their laughter rose, not mocking, but sharp and brittle, like glass breaking. The sound carried on the empty air until even the boards under Ronan's boots seemed to creak in reply. "There are no courts here," another widow said. She had auburn hair streaked with silver, loose under her veil. Her eyes glowed with something unnatural. "No law but grief. No judge but death. You signed more than a deed. Stranger, you signed yourself into our keeping." The circle tightened. Ronan tried to move, but the women shifted in unison, hemming him in. Their sheer size startled him. Each stood near a head taller than most men he'd met, shoulders squared like guardians of some forgotten gate. The air cooled. His lamp sputtered as though starved for breath. In the distance, a church bell pealed once, though Ronan knew the church had no bell. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his hand now off his gun. The leader raised her chin, veil drifting. Her face was lined but severe, beauty hardened by decades of bitterness. "We want release, but until it comes, we demand company, flesh to warm these hollow nights, blood to remind us we were once wives, not shadows." Ronan's pulse thudded. They weren't speaking of a casual night's shelter. Their words carried weight, ritual, and binding force. "You expect me to." He stopped, throat tight. "All of us," the leader confirmed. The 6 behind her nodded, their veils swaying. "You will not leave Ash Hollow until you have lain beneath the burden we carry." Ronan staggered back a step, but his boots struck something, an invisible wall of cold that had no give. Panic flared, but he bit it down. He had learned long ago that fear made the enemy stronger. Instead, he steadied himself, eyes scanning their faces. Behind the menace, he glimpsed weariness, a grief so heavy it had twisted into this strange demand. Their husbands had died here. Their lives had ended with them, yet their bodies still walked. "What if I refuse?" he said quietly. The leader's voice was a whisper edged with steel. "Then Ash Hollow will bury you before dawn." The widow's skirts rustled as they closed in, a circle of mourning cloth and veiled faces. Ronan's chest tightened, not just with fear, but with the dawning sense that this night would not be survived by gunfire or defiance. Survival might demand something stranger, listening to their curse, uncovering the truth buried under their demand. The lamp sputtered once more and went out. In the dark, 7 voices rose together: grief, longing, command. "You are ours now, Ronan Vale. Ours until the hollow is done with you." Darkness wrapped Ash Hollow like a shroud, and Ronan Vale stood in the center of it, ringed by the towering widows. Their forms shifted against the dim starlight, veils brushing the ground as though the wind moved them. Though the night was still, the air itself seemed to tremble with their presence. "You think you've bought timber and dust," the leader intoned, "but you've walked into the ledger of the dead." Ronan kept his feet planted. Fear tried to coil around him, but he knew better than to let it show. "Then tell me," he said evenly, "tell me why this place still breathes when every map says it's long gone." The women exchanged glances, veils rippling like shadows on water. One stepped forward, a widow with streaks of gray in her dark hair, her hands calloused as if she had known hard labor. Her voice cracked like a hinge long unused. "We were wives once, women of miners, merchants, lawmen. Ash Hollow was young, and it was cruel. The mine promised silver, and the men believed it. But silver breeds blood." Her words struck the air like nails. Another widow continued, her tone bitter as old whiskey. They fought over claims, fought with knives, with dynamite, with the bottle. One by one, our husbands never came home from the shafts or the streets. We buried them under crosses that splintered in the wind. We buried them until there was no one left to dig the graves but us. Ronan felt the chill deepen. He pictured the town bustling, once lamplight in saloon windows, hammer strikes ringing from the smithy. But in their telling, every sound turned to echo, and every echo to silence. The leader's veil shifted, and he caught the line of her mouth, lips pressed tight with years of swallowed rage. When the last coffin dropped into the dirt, we gathered here, 7 of us, the last wives. We prayed for release. And what answered? Ronan asked. His voice was low, though the desert seemed to swallow nothing. Every word hung heavy. The tallest widow's hands opened, rings glinting dull under the thin moon. Not God, not mercy, something older. It bound us here, said we would wait, that only when a living man gave himself to us all would the hunger end. The circle pressed closer, and Ronan's chest hammered. He understood now it wasn't want that drove them, it was compulsion, a bargain with something nameless, written in grief and sealed with despair. Another widow's voice trembled. She was the youngest of them, her face still carrying the softness of a woman not long past 30. We didn't ask for this curse. We didn't ask to outlive every man, every child. But we are chained here, and the years have turned to dust in our throats. We have no choice but to demand. Ronan's thoughts churned. He could see the truth burning behind their eyes. They were prisoners, not masters. Yet their demand was no less dangerous. He forced a steady breath. If your curse is real, then it has an end. Chains have keys. Where is yours? For the first time, silence fell over the circle. The women lowered their heads, as if the question cut deeper than any blade. Finally, the leader raised her gaze, eyes like coals banked under ash. You would seek the key? She asked. Ronan nodded once. Her veil trembled as if stirred by unseen wind. Then understand this. The key is buried with the mine, drowned in the blood of men who thought silver worth more than breath. To find it is to walk where no soul returns. The widows' voices joined together, soft and solemn, like a hymn warped by sorrow. The sound filled Ronan's chest with dread, but also with a grim certainty. They were cursed. The town was cursed. And unless he uncovered what lay in the mine's depths, Ash Hollow would never let him leave alive. Ronan Vale did not sleep. Not that night, not in that town. The widows left him standing in the square after their chant faded, their veils drifting into shadow as if the night had swallowed them whole. The only proof they'd been there at all was the chill in the air and the pounding of his heart. He lit another lamp inside the saloon, forcing himself to sit at a table. The glass he had turned upright earlier was still on the counter, but now water beaded its rim, though he had never filled it. He didn't touch it. Instead, he spread the deed to Ash Hollow before him like a shield, tracing the raised seal with his thumb. Ownership was supposed to mean power, yet here it was nothing more than paper. Every board creak overhead carried weight. Every gust that rattled a shutter seemed deliberate. Ronan's instincts sharpened. This was more than nerves. He had lived by gut feeling, and his gut told him he was being watched. From the corner of his eye, a figure drifted past the cracked saloon window, tall, veiled, moving soundless. He jerked up, hand flying to his revolver. The window was empty when he faced it, only starlight spilling across the dust. They want you cornered, he muttered, steadying his breath. They want you off balance. The truth pressed harder. With each hour he could not fight Ash Hollow like he'd fought men. These widows wielded something older than bullets and colder than steel. Still, survival meant refusing to yield. Ronan forced himself out into the street, lamp in hand. The air was still as stone, yet the lamp's flame bent sideways, tugged by an unseen breath. He turned toward the hotel porch, and there she stood, the auburn-haired widow. Her veil lifted just enough for him to see her lips curve in a grim smile. "You test us," she said, her voice like frost on glass. "Do you think will alone will save you?" "I think will is all that's ever saved anyone," Ronan answered. His hand brushed the butt of his Colt, but didn't draw. He knew it would do no good against what she was. She moved closer, the boards under her feet not making a sound. Men always think they can bargain, always think strength is choice. But here, strength belongs to us. This place breathes with our grief. Do you not feel it already in your bones? And he did. His legs ached as if he'd marched for days, though he'd barely walked the street. His chest tightened, lungs dragging air heavy as coal dust. Ronan straightened, fighting the drag with raw stubbornness. If the hollow breathes through you, then it knows me too, and it knows I won't bend. For a moment, the widow's smile faltered, her eyes flashing something like recognition, perhaps even respect. But then the shadows stirred, and the others appeared, 7 veils drifting like storm clouds around him once again. The tallest, their leader, raised her hand. Instantly, the lamp in Ronan's grip blew out, darkness clamped down, broken only by their pale faces. "You will learn," she said. "Defiance feeds the curse as much as submission. Every breath you steal from Ash Hollow will cost you double." The ground trembled faintly beneath his boots, as though the mine tunnels far below had shifted. Boards rattled, windows shuddered, and the whole town seemed to lean closer. Ronan gritted his teeth, bracing against the invisible pressure. He'd stood his ground against men who had tried to break him with fists and rifles. This was different, but the principle was the same: yield nothing. "I won't run," he said flatly, every word carved from stone. "If this town wants me dead, it'll have to take me standing." The widow's veils rustled, though no wind blew. Then, without another word, they slipped back into the dark, leaving Ronan alone in the silent street. But as he stood there, chest heaving, he knew the truth. He had survived the first trial of Ash Hollow not because he was stronger, but because the widows were testing him. And next time, they would not stop short of breaking him. Ronan Vale sat alone in the saloon as midnight crept closer, the boards moaning faintly, as if the town itself shifted in restless sleep. His revolver lay on the table, but it felt like a child's toy against the weight pressing in from every corner. He'd held his ground, yes, but the widows had not left him to peace, they had left him to expectation. The air thickened, carrying with it the faint scent of lavender and smoke, the same he'd caught near the hotel earlier. His lamp sputtered. A voice rose from the dark doorway, low and steady. "Come, Ronan Vale. The hollow does not wait." He turned. The leader stood framed in moonlight, veil draped like a shroud. Behind her, 6 figures fanned out, tall and silent, their shadows stretching across the floor like dark rivers. Ronan's throat was dry, but he stood anyway. "What is it you mean to do tonight?" The auburn-haired widow answered, her tone sharp as a chisel. "What we must. To bind you, to test you, to see if you carry the strength to bear us all." They beckoned him outside. The night air was colder now, sharp enough to sting. The stars above seemed blurred, as if even the heavens dared not look too closely at Ash Hollow. They led him toward the old church at the far end of town. Its steeple had collapsed years ago, and the double doors sagged on rusted hinges. Yet candles flickered inside, dozens of them, though no hand had lit them in years. The widows moved in a circle around him, their veils brushing his shoulders. He felt their nearness like chains tightening, each step a ritual, each breath drawn in unison. The leader raised her hand, and the doors creaked open with a groan. "Enter," she commanded. The church interior was stripped bare, no pews, no altar, only the cracked floorboards and a gaping hole in the center where the earth had been dug out long ago. At its edge stood a crude iron cross, bent nearly double, as though it had tried and failed to escape. Ronan stopped short. "What is this?" The youngest widow's voice trembled. "The place of our binding. Here we prayed for mercy, and here mercy turned to curse. Every man who steps within these walls must prove himself, or the hollow will claim him." He clenched his jaw. "And how do I prove myself?" The leader's veil fluttered. "You will stand among us and not falter. You will hear our grief, carry it, and not turn away. If you run, the ground will take you. If you fight, the shadows will swallow you." The 7 closed around him, forming a ring tighter than before. Their voices rose, not in words but in a low, throbbing hum that vibrated through the floor. The sound slid into Ronan's bones, heavy as chains. His chest tightened, and images not his own seared across his mind. Men falling in mine shafts, women standing over shallow graves, the endless tolling of a bell that no longer hung in the tower. He staggered, knees buckling. The widows pressed closer, their veils brushing his face, their voices swelling until the walls shook. He gasped, fighting the weight of sorrow pressing into him. One thought burned clear through the haze. "They are testing me. Not killing me, testing me." Gritting his teeth, he forced his spine straight. He let the grief wash through him like a storm tide, but he did not break. He locked eyes with the leader through her veil, his voice raw but steady. "I see it. I hear it. But it won't take me down." The hum faltered. The widows drew back a fraction, their faces half lit by the wavering candles. For a moment, he thought he saw something shift, something less cruel, almost human, in their expressions. Then the leader spoke, her words quiet, but heavy as earth on a coffin lid. "You endure. For now. But the hollow is not done with you, Ronan Vale. This was but the first night's test." The candles snuffed out at once, plunging the church into black, and Ronan, swaying in the dark, knew dawn was still far away. The night after the church ritual, Ronan Vale sat slumped at a saloon table, his breath fogging in the cold air seeping through the broken windows. His body still carried the weight of what he'd endured. The grief, the chanting, the visions pressed into his mind like brands. Sleep would not come. When he closed his eyes, he saw miners crushed under falling rock, women weeping at graves, and 7 veiled faces staring at him with expectation sharpened into demand. The floorboards creaked. He looked up. The widows stood in the doorway again, tall and still as gravestones. Moonlight cut across their veils, silvering their edges. The leader entered first, her steps soundless despite the warped wood. "You endured," she said, her voice a low bell toll. "Few men could have withstood the first night, but the hollow's hunger remains." Ronan forced himself upright, palms pressed against the rough table. "If I'm to live through this, then we strike a bargain. I won't be your pawn, but I won't run either." The auburn-haired widow tilted her head, her eyes gleaming through the veil. "You think you can bargain with what binds us? The curse has no ears for men's terms." "Then you've been listening wrong," Ronan shot back. His voice was rough but steady. "Every curse has a crack in it. You want release, and I want out. That means there's room for a deal." The youngest widow stepped forward, her veil thinner, her face pale with sorrow. "You would help us escape?" "If there's a way," Ronan said. "But not if you keep pushing me into the ground like a beast. You want me to carry your grief? Fine. But I'll do it on my feet." The circle of women tightened, murmurs rising among them. Some sounded doubtful, others hungry with hope. At last the leader raised her hand, silencing them. "There is a way," she admitted, her tone brittle as old bone. "But it was buried with the mine, drowned in the blood of those who sought silver. The key to our release lies below, in tunnels no living man has walked in decades." Ronan's stomach nodded. The mine, the cursed heart of Ash Hollow. "Then, that's where I'll go." The widows shifted uneasily, their veils brushing one another like restless wings. The auburn-haired one hissed, "You'll die down there. Every man who tried was swallowed by the dark." "Maybe, Ronan said, standing to meet their gaze. "But I've seen dark before, and if that's what it takes to break your chains and mine, then I'll face it." The leader regarded him for a long moment, then inclined her head. "We will grant you one thing, Ronan Vale. No hand of ours will strike you down until you enter the mine. But know this, if you fail, the Hollow will claim you, body and soul. There will be no second bargain." Ronan nodded once, sealing his own promise. "Then we have an accord." The widows withdrew into the shadows, their veils fading into the cold air until only the leader remained. She lingered a heartbeat longer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Beware, Ronan Vale. Not all of us wish for mercy. Some would rather keep you forever than see dawn without you." Then she vanished, leaving the saloon colder than before. Ronan stood in the silence, his hand resting on the revolver that suddenly felt useless at his side. Bargain or no, he knew the Hollow hadn't spared him. It had only postponed its claim. And tomorrow, the mine would open its throat to swallow him whole. Morning broke in Ash Hollow, with a pale, colorless light. The sun rose, but its warmth never touched the crooked roofs or splintered fences. Ronan Vale stepped out of the saloon and squinted at the silent street, boots crunching on frost-silvered dust. His mare shifted uneasily at the hitching post, ears pricked as though she too felt the weight pressing down from the mine that loomed beyond the town. He tightened her reins and stroked her neck. "Easy, girl. You're smarter than me for wanting to leave." Yet he didn't climb into the saddle. The bargain was made. If there was a key to the widow's curse, it lay underground. The path to the mine ran crooked behind the hotel, a scar of broken timbers and collapsed earth. The entrance gaped like the mouth of a beast, long dead, but not forgotten. As Ronan approached, he saw fresh tracks in the dust boots, far larger than his own, pressed deep as if whoever walked them carried a burden. He knelt, running his fingers along the edges. They weren't new, but they weren't decades old either. Someone had walked this way after the town had supposedly died. The hair on his neck prickled. Inside the shaft, his lantern light glimmered across rusted rails and half-buried ore carts. The air was thick with the metallic tang of earth and something older mildew, blood, grief, all blended into one. He pushed deeper, each step groaning on planks that should have rotted away long ago but still held. Halfway down the main tunnel, he found it. A leather-bound journal wedged between two stones, preserved by dust. He tugged it free, brushing grit from the cracked cover. Inside, the handwriting was uneven but legible, each line a confession. The 17th of April. The men fight more each day. The silver vein is nearly gone. Some speak of curses, of shadows in the deep that whisper our names. I see them too when I close my eyes. The widows pray above, but their prayers echo hollow. God has left Ash Hollow. Ronan flipped through, the entries growing darker. May 3. 7 women remain. They gathered in the church and called upon something not holy. Their voices shook the mine itself. When I returned below, the tunnels felt alive, as though walls were listening. The bargain is struck, they say. A man must give himself to all, or the Hollow will never release them. The last page was smudged, the ink warped by moisture. May 6. I hear them calling even down here. If I do not return, know the mine holds the key. But no man should. The words ended in a jagged line, the page torn. Ronan closed the book slowly, breath harsh in the cold air. Now he knew the truth. The widows hadn't invented their curse out of madness. It was real, bound in the earth, sealed by ritual. The key to breaking it was here, buried with the dead miners and the silver they had bled for. As he tucked the journal into his coat, the lantern flame guttered. A draft swept the tunnel, whispering like voices rising from the rock. The timbers groaned. Somewhere deeper in the shaft, a low rumble echoed, as if something shifted in the dark. Ronan drew his revolver, though he knew bullets would be useless against whispers. Still, the weight steadied him. If the Hollow wants me, he muttered. "It'll have to come and take me." He turned back toward the entrance, but he wasn't alone. At the mouth of the tunnel, veils shimmered faintly in the light. The 7 widows stood waiting, silent as gravestones, their eyes glinting like embers in the shadows. The leader stepped forward, her voice carrying down the tunnel like a funeral hymn. "You've found what was hidden, Ronan Vale, but knowing the truth does not save you. Now, the hollow will demand its price." The widows' figures filled the mouth of the mine, their veils swaying though no wind touched them. Ronan Vale froze, lantern in one hand, revolver in the other. The journal pressed against his chest inside his coat, its weight heavier than lead. He had proof of their curse, of the bargain struck long before his arrival, but proof meant nothing if he couldn't survive the night. The leader's voice rang down the tunnel, resonant as a church bell struck in mourning. "You've read the truth. You've seen where our chains were forged. Now, Ronan Vale, you must decide. Carry our grief willingly, or let the hollow devour you." Ronan's throat was dry, but he forced his voice to steady. "You want release, I'll find the key. But if you keep pressing me like this, you'll kill the only man fool enough to try." The youngest widow stepped forward, her pale face streaked with something that looked too much like tears. "We don't wish to kill you. Not all of us." She turned her head, and Ronan caught the venom in the auburn-haired widow's glare. "He speaks of mercy," she spat. "Mercy never filled a grave. Mercy never brought a husband back. Why should we beg for freedom when we can keep him forever? Better a living man bound to us than empty arms again." The circle splintered. Murmurs rose among the widows, low and furious, their voices overlapping like clashing hymns. Some wanted release, some wanted possession. The leader raised her hand, but the others did not fall silent. The hollow itself seemed to stir at their discord, the ground trembling under Ronan's boots. Then came the storm. A howl rose outside, fierce and unnatural, shaking the timbers of the mine. Dust rained down from the beams. Ronan stumbled to the entrance, lantern light cutting across the deserted town. The sky boiled with black clouds, lit by veins of white fire. Wind tore down Main Street, rattling shutters, slamming doors wide. And with the storm came shapes. Figures poured from the earth like smoke, half-formed men in miners' gear, their faces gaunt, eyes empty hollows. Picks and shovels clanged as they dragged them, but no sound matched their movement. Their mouths opened in silent screams. Ronan's blood ran cold. These were no mere memories. They were the dead husbands, the miners whose bones lay beneath Ash Hollow, and they were not at rest. The widows' cries pierced the storm. Some shrieked in rage, others in despair, their veils whipping like torn banners. The leader spread her arms as though to command the wraiths, but they surged past her, hungry, relentless. Ronan bolted into the street, revolver raised, though he knew it was folly. The specters swarmed, circling him in a blur of gray. He fired anyway, shots ringing, muzzle flash searing, but the bullets passed through smoke and shadow. "Damnation," he growled, backing toward the saloon. His lantern flickered, then guttered out, plunging the town into the storm's unnatural light. The widows closed in, torn between fury and pleading. The youngest reached for him, her hand trembling. "Help us, Ronan Vale. Find the way before they take us all." The auburn-haired widow's voice sliced through. "No! He's ours! Let the hollow bind him and end the waiting." The wraiths pressed tighter, their forms brushing against his skin like ice. Ronan's chest seized, his breath frosting the air. He stumbled against the saloon wall, his mind a storm of its own. If he gave in, he'd be nothing but another ghost in their circle. If he resisted, the hollow might tear the widows apart in its hunger. Lightning split the sky, casting Ash Hollow in stark silver. In that instant, Ronan knew he stood at the breaking point, caught between the widow's curse, the fury of the restless dead, and his own will to survive. and whichever choice he made, dawn would not come gently. The storm raged over Ash Hollow, tearing shingles from rooftops and flinging dust through the air like shrapnel. Ronan Vale stood in the center of Main Street, lantern dead in his hand, revolver useless at his side. The wraiths circled, their hollow eyes glowing faint with the memory of lantern light. Their mouths stretched in eternal cries, the wind carried but never voiced. The widows stood arrayed around him, their veils thrashing like banners of mourning. Their leader raised both hands, her voice ringing over the gale. The hollow demands, choose, Ronan Vale. Yield yourself to us, and we shall be freed, or defy, and all shall be swallowed. The auburn-haired widow hissed like a striking serpent, stepping forward. Don't listen to her promises. Freedom is emptiness. Stay, and you will live. You will warm us, feed us, end our solitude. You are ours. Her words dug deep, heavier than iron. The youngest widow clutched her veil as tears streamed down her pale face. No, he must break it. The curse binds us tighter with each year. If he surrenders, we remain chained forever. The wraiths drew closer. Their pickaxes scraped against the boards, though their hands never truly touched the earth. Their grief was endless, and their hunger absolute. Ronan pressed his back against the saloon wall, heart hammering. The journal weighed against his chest, the final words etched into his mind. The key is buried with the mine, drowned in the blood of men who sought silver. He straightened, forcing air into his lungs. He could not fight shadows, nor could he flee. The town itself would not let him. Only choice remained. He looked to the widows, to the storm, to the circling dead. His voice rang clear, though fear rode every word. If I give myself, I'm no man. I'm another ghost tied to your grief. If I walk away, you'll tear me to pieces before dawn. But there is one thing left I can do. I can carry your burden into the mine and end it at its source. The leader's veil snapped in the storm. That path is death. Maybe, Ronan said, his grip tightening on the revolver. But it's my death to wager not the hollows. The widows murmured, some voices breaking with desperate hope, others with fury. The auburn-haired widow lunged, her fingers clawing for his chest, but the leader caught her arm with a force that shook the air. Enough, the leader commanded. Let him try. The wraiths howled, circling faster, pressing closer. Ronan stepped forward, forcing his way through their cold weight. Every brush of their forms drained him, made his breath shallow, but he did not stop. He pushed down the street, past the church, toward the yawning mouth of the mine. The widows followed, their veils trailing like storm clouds. Some begged him to turn back, others cursed his name. All were bound to him now, their fate tied to his choice. At the entrance, the earth groaned like a living thing. Thunder split the sky, and for an instant, the hollow glowed with a pale, unnatural light. Ronan looked back only once. If I don't return, he said, then pray the hollow takes me and not you. Then, with the storm at his back and the widow's eyes burning into him, Ronan Vale stepped into the mine, where the true heart of Ash Hollow waited to decide whether he would break the curse or be consumed by it. The mine swallowed Ronan Vale whole, its timbers groaning overhead as though they remembered every man who had died beneath them. The lantern sputtered back to life in his hand, casting long, crooked shadows down the shaft. Behind him, the storm's howl dulled to a muffled roar. Ahead stretched silence so complete, it pressed into his ears like cotton. Each step was heavier than the last. The journal's words echoed in his mind. The key is buried with the mine, drowned in the blood of men who sought silver. He followed the rails deeper, boots crunching on gravel, until the walls seemed to tighten, veins of silver flashing faintly in the light like eyes watching him pass. Then the tunnel widened into a cavern. In its center lay a pit, half collapsed, its edges blackened by fire. Around it were scattered bones, miners' helmets rusted through. picks broken in two. Among the debris stood an altar of stone, crudely built but untouched by time. Upon it rested a shard of silver, jagged, gleaming with an unnatural light. The widow's voices rose behind him. They hadn't entered, but their cries carried down the shaft, mingling grief with hope. "Take it! End us!" Others wailed. "No, keep him. Let him stay." Ronan approached the altar slowly. As his hand neared the shard, the wraiths appeared, shadows of the dead, crawling from the pit, their hollow eyes burning with the reflection of silver. They swarmed, but not to attack. They circled him, pressing him toward the altar, desperate, pleading. He understood then. The shard was the key, the remnant of the vein they had died for, the very heart of the bargain. To break it was to end the curse. To wield it was to bind himself to the widows forever. The storm outside raged louder, the ground shuddering under his boots. Ronan drew a breath so deep it burned his chest. "I won't be your prisoner," he said, voice steady. "But I won't leave you chained either." He raised the revolver, and with all the force of his will, brought its butt down on the shard. The cavern erupted in a blinding flash. The wraiths wailed, their forms unraveling into dust that swirled upward like smoke through unseen cracks. The ground heaved, timbers cracked and fell. Ronan staggered back, shielding his eyes as the shards splintered into nothing. The widow's cries pierced the storm, but they were different now, softer, raw with release. He stumbled from the cavern as the mine collapsed behind him, earth burying the curse once and for all. When he emerged onto Main Street, dawn had broken. The storm had vanished, as though it had never been. The air was sharp, clean. 7 figures waited in the square. The widows stood without veils, their faces bare at last. Lines of grief still marked them, but their eyes were clear, their forms already fading in the morning light. The leader stepped forward. For the first time, her voice carried no command, only gratitude. "You have freed us, Ronan Vale. Our chains are broken. Ash Hollow is yours now, but it will never hunger again." One by one, they dissolved into the light, until only silence remained. Ronan swayed on his feet, exhaustion threatening to drag him down. Yet the weight that had pressed on him since he rode into Ash Hollow was gone. He looked around at the empty town, its broken windows glittering in the sunrise. For the first time, it truly felt like his. He holstered the revolver and untied his mare. She nickered softly, ears pricked to the calm. Ronan mounted, casting one last look at the street where the widows had stood. "Rest easy," he murmured. With the sun climbing higher, he rode away from Ash Hollow. The ghost town behind him at last quiet, its curse buried, its widows free, and its secrets sealed forever. If you thought these were crazy, you won't want to miss what happens in this next video.